Hey, it's Brett, and this is Brett and Some Books. Today we're continuing the plot to seize the White House by Jules Archer. This is part 2, and it's called The Indispensable Man. Smedley Darlington Butler was born July 30th, 1881, in Westchester, Pennsylvania, the first of 3 sons. Both his parents came from old and distinguished Quaker families. Some of his forebears include pacifists who had operated an underground railroad station for runaway slaves, and grandparents who had joined the Union Army to defend Gettysburg against Robert E. Lee's army. On his mother's side, he was descended from the Hicksite branch of the Society of Friends and Congressman Smedley Darlington, the grandfather for whom he was named. His paternal lineage traced back to Noble Butler, who came to America shortly after William Penn. His father, Thomas S. Butler, was a bluntly outspoken judge who spent 32 years in Congress, where he wielded great influence as chairman of the House Naval Affairs Committee. Once, when he had advocated a large navy, a close Quaker friend approached him. "Thee is a fine friend." "Thee," the fine friend snorted, "is a damn fool." The Quaker archaisms thee, thy, and thine were used only within the family and sometimes to intimate friends. The Quakerism of both Thomas Butler and his son Smedley was of that order of earlier hot-tempered Quakers who belabored each other with wagon tongues, while pausing between hearty blows they exchanged to invoke divine forgiveness. Smedley picked up some of his father's uninhibited language as early as age 5, inviting maternal chastisement until his father went to his defenses by roaring, "I don't want a son who doesn't know how to use an honest damn now and then." Reared in upper middle class comfort with a politically prominent father, grandfather, and uncles, it was taken for granted that he was marked for prominence. Subtle pressures were exerted by 4 maiden aunts who adored and fussed over their first nephew, keeping him in golden curls and dressing him in a little Lord Fauntleroy suit. Jeering peers who mistook the clothes for the boy found his fistwork as fancy as his finery. Stirred by tales of both his grandfathers in the Union Army, he developed a passionate love for tin soldiers, toy cannons, and books with pictures of battles. His mother, Maud Darlington Butler, sought to inculcate peaceful doctrines in her son by taking him to Hicksite Quaker meetings twice a week and sending him to the Friends grade school in Westchester. However, his early fascination with things martial persisted. When he was 12, he joined a Westchester branch of the Boys Brigade, a preparedness youth movement that went in for military drills. His father had no objection and even bought his son the first uniform Smedley ever wore. He felt proud. At Haverford Preparatory School near Philadelphia, a popular choice of old Quaker families, he joined both the baseball and the football teams. Although he was younger and lighter than his teammates, his fighting spirit, qualities of leadership, candor, and fair dealing made him highly popular and won him the captaincy of both teams. He was only a little over 16 and a half on February 15th, 1898, when the U.S. battleship Maine blew up in Havana Harbor at 9:40 p.m. Americans began chanting, "Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain," around public bonfires, and volunteer companies marched happily off to war singing, "We'll hang General Weyler to a sour apple tree." Young Butler found himself swept up by the excitement. Struggling with math and English seemed a hopelessly insipid pursuit, with the newspapers full of blazing accounts of the terrible brutality of Spanish masters of the little Caribbean island they had enslaved. Smedley learned to join the noble crusade to liberate Cuba in the company of the fine fellows he saw marching off from Westchester daily. Fearful of revealing his aspirations to his parents, he attempted a fait accompli by seeking to enlist with the 6th Pennsylvania Volunteers in his hometown. Rejected as underage, he braced himself to corner his father in the sunlit library of their house on Minor Street one morning. "Father," he said, "I want to enlist. Thee could get me into the Navy as an apprentice if necessary." Thomas Butler tugged his thick handlebar mustache with stubby fingers, regarding his son skeptically. "I have known of thy desire to go to war, but thee is too young." Smedley's jaw jutted. "If thee won't help me, I'll run away and join the General Army." "If thee does, it will avail thee nothing," his father said quietly. "I will see that they discharge thee." One night, the crestfallen youth overheard his father tell his mother privately that Congress had authorized an increase of the Marine Corps by 2,000 men and 24 second lieutenants for the duration of the war. "The Marine Corps is a finely trained body of men," his father said. "Too bad Smedley is so young. He seems determined to go." A new idea took root. Smedley has seen a Marine in Westchester, a young god in a magnificent uniform of dark blue, coat decorated with many shiny buttons, and light blue trousers with scarlet stripes running down the seams. Wouldn't a fellow cut a fine figure in that? That night he fell asleep with visions of himself as a faultlessly tailored Marine charging up a Cuban hill, his hilt sword pointed forward, inspiring the men behind him in a victorious charge. At breakfast, heart pounding, he gave his mother an ultimatum. "I'm going to be a Marine. If thee doesn't come with me and give me thy permission, I'll hire a man to say he is my father, and I'll run away and enlist in some faraway regiment where I'm not known." His mother reluctantly agreed to accompany him by train to Marine Corps headquarters in Washington, without telling his father. In the competitive examination for Marine lieutenants, he ranked second among 200 applicants. Joyfully, he heard the gates of childhood close behind him. Ahead beckoned the exciting world of manhood and adventure. But he swallowed hard when he had to face his father and admit that he had won acceptance in the Marine Corps by adding 2 years to his age. "Well," his father sighed, "if thee is determined to go, thee shall go. But don't add another year to thy age, my son. Thy mother and I weren't married until 1879. He could scarcely contain his pride when his lean, wiry frame was encased in a crisp new uniform, only average in height, with sloping shoulders, one higher than the other. The new second lieutenant nevertheless managed to look properly fierce because of a long, large nose and a pair of blazing, protruding eyes that gave him the bold look of a young adventurer. Huge-handed, he had a husky voice that quickly developed into a leather-neck growl, and a lively sense of humor that appealed to his fellow Marines. His first glimpse of war came the day he arrived at Santiago, Cuba, on July 1st, 1898, past a Spanish cruiser still burning in the harbor. Rigid with excitement, he boarded another ship that took him to Guantanamo Bay, where he joined the Marine Battalion of the North Atlantic Squadron. The next day, Monsieur C. Goodrell, the captain of Butler's company, took him on a 2-man reconnaissance of enemy positions. As they moved along a mountain trail, a shot rang out, and a bullet whizzed past Butler's head. He flung himself prone and hugged the earth, his heart beating wildly. "What in the hell is the matter?" "That was a bullet." "Well, what if it was? A little excitement now and then keeps you from going stale." soldiering under Goodrell, who had no formal military education, Butler became infused with the spirit of the Corps. He relished the bonds of comradeship, the fierce loyalties, the cool courage, the pride in being a Marine that united men who considered themselves a fighting elite. The officers were all professional soldiers who chewed tobacco, drank raw whiskey, cursed a blue streak, drilled the tails off their troops in garrison, and were experts in the Lee straight pull 6mm rifle, Gatling gun, and Hotchkiss revolving cannon. Thoroughly unorthodox, wild in their humor, they were fierce warriors who set an example for their men in battle by often fighting on after they were wounded. In young Butler's eyes, they were heroes all. He was enormously proud of his first two decorations, the Spanish and West Indian campaign medals, but he was even prouder simply of being a full-fledged leatherneck who had shared the bonds of a campaign with the Marines of Guantanamo. By the time his battalion returned home, he and two other young Marine officers, John A. Lejeune and Buck Neville, became an inseparable trio. Lejeune and Neville were each destined to rise to the rank of commander in the Marine Corps. The Spanish-American War was a high point in my life when I went to it at the age of 16, Butler later reminisced wryly, to defend my home in Pennsylvania against the Spaniards in Cuba.